For our culture, your leadership style is too strict, Victoria told the management staff as a whole, not without warning and not in private. Every department head was present for the Monday morning meeting. I'm Colin Drake, a 47-year-old who served as Iron Veil Robotics Operations Director for 7 years until 10 minutes ago. I gave a single nod, shut off my laptop, and said, "Understood." Victoria had only been president for 8 weeks. Investors needed someone with presence and vision to increase the company's appeal to potential buyers. She had never set foot on our production floor, wore expensive suits, and spoke of synergistic alignment. I took one cardboard box for personal belongings and another for the binders I had painstakingly constructed over the course of 7 years, and I left my workplace without a fight in 22 minutes. Delivery schedules, pricing schemes, and vendor relationships make up the unseen framework that keeps everything in place. As I was packing, Victoria appeared in my doorway and said, "Colin, this isn't personal," in a quieter voice now that we were alone ourselves. "We just need someone with a more collaborative approach." I continued packing. "The past 4 quarters speak for themselves," I said. "Numbers aren't everything in modern business," Victoria retorted. I didn't bother to explain that the $12 million in yearly sales, which was up from $5 million when I first started, was a result of relationships, the gradual and systematic development of trust with Midwest suppliers, handshakes, site visits, and knowing the names of people's children. Victoria wouldn't get that our ability to price our products 6% less than competitors while maintaining healthy margins was made possible by my outmoded methods, or that my strict leadership style was what kept raw supplies arriving on schedule during the 2023 supply chain breakdown. On my way out, I wished my team luck and shook hands with them. I meant it. They deserved better than what was about to happen since they were decent people. My phone flooded with messages on the way home, including those from surprised co-workers and perplexed suppliers who had somehow previously heard. I didn't respond. Rather, I parked at an overlook and turned toward the Mississippi River. I had nowhere to go at 1 p.m. on a Monday for the first time in 7 years. I mumbled to myself, "Congratulations on your freedom," as I saw barges struggle against the current below. I knew what was going to happen. I had previously seen this film. The first clues were already present in Victoria's office, the consulting firm she had hired to modernize procurement, the vendor portal software she had suggested adopting, and the MBA lingo. What she didn't know was that every major supplier contract was personally negotiated by me, built on handshakes and mutual respect, not software platforms. There was no transition plan because nobody had asked for one, and now nobody ever would. I joined Iron Veil when they were a struggling outfit in an old warehouse near the rail yard. Their product line, specialized factory automation components, was solid, but they couldn't deliver consistently enough to land major contracts. The owner, Harold Blackwell, was an engineering genius with no mind for logistics. "I need someone who can fix this damn supply chain mess," Harold had told me during my interview, pointing to a whiteboard covered in delivery delays and cost overruns. "You military guys understand systems," he'd said. "Make this work and I'll make it worth your while." After 15 years as a logistics officer in the Army, I knew how to build reliable supply chains, not by bullying vendors into submission that never works long-term, but by creating mutual dependency partnerships where both sides had skin in the game. I spent that first year on the road, visited every critical supplier personally, and learned their capabilities, their constraints, and their aspirations. Some were small family operations in places like Lima, Ohio, or Dubuque, Iowa. Others were divisions of larger corporations where the right relationship with a purchasing manager meant priority status during shortages. By year 3, we had the region's most robust supply network. When competitors were shutting down production lines due to part shortages, we kept running. Our delivery reliability hit 98.6%, and customer retention reached 91%. Harold understood the value. "Whatever you're doing with these suppliers, keep doing it," he'd say at our monthly reviews. "Best investment I ever made was bringing you on." But Harold sold the company last spring, saying he was ready to retire, fish more, and see his grandkids. The investment group that bought Iron Veil immediately started professionalizing operations, new software, new reporting structures, new KPIs, and finally Victoria. The first crack appeared during her second week. She canceled my quarterly supplier visit trip, calling it an unnecessary expense in the digital age. The second came during a strategy meeting where she dismissed my concerns about changing payment terms with key vendors. "They'll adjust," she said confidently. "We're too important to them." The third was overhearing her tell someone on the phone that operations was stuck in the last century and needed fresh blood. I could have fought harder, could have explained that our success was built on precisely the old-school approach. She was dismantling what made our suppliers work with us, trust, not just transactions. But I recognized the pattern. I'd seen it in the military, too. New leadership determined to make their mark by changing what already works. So I started making copies of my contact list, backing up my notes, and preparing for the inevitable. When it came, the only surprise was the public nature of my dismissal. 3 days after my firing, Thomas Franklin, chief engineer at Flynn Security, one of our biggest customers, called. "Heard what happened?" he said. "Their loss. Listen, are you free for lunch? No agenda, just two old guys complaining about the world." We met at a steakhouse downtown. Thomas was pushing 60, with the weathered hands of someone who'd spent decades building things before moving into management. "So what's next for Colin Drake?" he asked after we ordered. "Taking some time evaluating options," I replied. Thomas nodded. "Heard from anyone at Iron Veil?" he asked. "Radio silence," I answered. "Not surprised," he responded. "Victoria's already making waves." Thomas continued. "She announced a new vendor management system yesterday, mandatory for all suppliers." He studied my face. "You didn't set that up, did you?" "No," I said. "All our vendor relationships were personal, direct lines of communication, real people solving real problems." "That's what I figured." Thomas leaned forward. "Colin, I'm going to be straight with you. We're already seeing delays from Iron Veil. Nothing major yet, but the warning signs are there. Your replacement is some kid from business school who talks about strategic procurement, but doesn't know the difference between grade 5 and grade 8 fasteners." I took a sip of water, trying to mask my reaction. It was happening faster than I'd expected. "Not your problem anymore," Thomas continued. "But here's what is interesting. Vice and Bulwarks is looking for someone to overhaul their operations. Their CEO, Julia Winters, is an old friend. When I heard what happened to you, I mentioned your name." "I appreciate that," I said. "She wants to meet you." Thomas pressed on. "They're expanding, and their current setup can't handle the growth." Sound familiar? It did. Exactly like Iron Veil 7 years ago. As we finished lunch, my phone buzzed with a text from Harold, my old boss. "Just heard. What the hell were they thinking? Call me." On the drive home, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, I was past that, but something colder, more calculated. Victoria made a critical error. She'd assumed the systems I built were transferable, that relationships could be managed through software and form emails, and that suppliers would stick with Iron Veil out of inertia or necessity. She didn't understand that I'd structured every major contract to require personal renegotiation annually. No auto-renewals, no standard terms. Each one customized with me as the point of contact. It wasn't sabotage. It was how I'd always operated. Personal accountability built into the system. My system. That evening, I received my first email from Iron Veil since the firing. Not from Victoria, but from purchasing. It read, "Urgent need vendor contact information from Midwest Precision. Their representative says they only deal with Colin Drake." I didn't reply. Instead, I called Harold back, then Julia Winters at Vice and Bulwarks, and 3 other companies who tried to hire me away over the years. By Friday, I had 4 solid offers. By Monday, I'd made my decision. I wasn't just going to rebuild somewhere else. I was going to show Victoria exactly what she'd thrown away. 2 weeks after my firing, I accepted the chief operations officer position at Weiss and Bulwarks. They manufactured specialized laboratory equipment, different products from Iron Veil, but with similar supply chain challenges. Julia Winters, their CEO, gave me full authority to rebuild their operations from the ground up. "We need what you built at Iron Veil," she said during our final interview. "Our growth is outpacing our infrastructure. Fix it, and there's equity in it for you." I spent my first day walking the floor, talking to line workers, and getting the unfiltered truth about what worked and what didn't. By day 3, I had identified their critical weaknesses: unreliable component deliveries, quality inconsistencies from key suppliers, and wasteful inventory practices. That Friday, my personal phone rang. Victoria Lang's name lit up the screen. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was polite, but tense. "Colin, hope you're well. We're having some challenges with supplier transitions. Wondering if you might be available for a brief consultation, compensated, of course." I didn't call back. Monday morning, my administrative assistant forwarded an email that had come to the general contact form, an urgent request from Victoria Lang, president of Iron Veil Robotics. I deleted it without reading further. By Wednesday, she was calling my personal phone every few hours. I blocked her number. On Thursday, she showed up at Weisson's reception area. "Mr. Drake is in meetings all day," the receptionist told her, following my standing instructions for any Iron Veil visitors. "Tell him it's urgent," Victoria insisted. "We have a major production delay that's about to cost us millions." I watched through the security feed from my office as she waited for 30 minutes before leaving, her perfect composure finally cracking. That afternoon, I received a detailed email from Brian Cooper, my former assistant at Iron Veil. We'd stayed in touch, and he'd become my eyes and ears inside the company. "Complete chaos," he wrote. He continued, "Midwest Precision raised prices 15% on the new contract. Valari Components pushed delivery dates out 6 weeks. 3 other vendors have capacity issues that mysteriously only affect Iron Veil orders. Victoria called 4 emergency management meetings this week alone. I hadn't asked these vendors to punish Iron Veil. I hadn't needed to. They'd seen how I was treated and drawn their own conclusions about the new leadership. Some had worked with me for years across multiple companies. They knew who kept promises and who didn't. The next morning, Harold Blackwell called. "The board is starting to ask questions," he said. Harold had kept a 15% stake in Iron Veil after selling. "Victoria is blaming vendor hostility for the delays," Harold said. "She says you poisoned the well on your way out." I've had 0 contact with any Iron Veil vendor since I left. I replied truthfully, "I believe you, but she's convinced herself she's the victim here." Harold paused. "They lost the Braxton contract yesterday." He continued, "They couldn't guarantee delivery dates. Braxton Industries, a client I'd personally cultivated for 3 years before they finally signed on, was one of Iron Veil's largest accounts." "Not my concern anymore," I said. "Of course not," Harold agreed. "By the way, how's the new gig?" "Different challenges. Similar solutions," I said. I hesitated, then added, "I might need to bring on some additional manufacturing capacity soon. Know anyone looking to sublet factory space?" Harold chuckled. "Funny you should ask. I might have some leverage to help with that very soon." A week later, I received a formal letter from Iron Veil's legal department claiming I had violated non-solicitation agreements by interfering with their vendor relationships. I forwarded it to Julia's legal team without comment. The response came back within hours. No merit, no evidence, no concern. They were right. I hadn't solicited anyone. I had simply stepped aside and let reality take its course. That night, I slept better than I had in months. A month into my new role at Weiss-Sun, I received a message on LinkedIn from Eleanor Hayes, Iron Veil's head of finance. We'd worked well together during my time there, both of us detail-oriented, process-driven professionals who preferred results over politics. "Can we meet?" was all she wrote. We chose a coffee shop halfway between our offices. Eleanor looked exhausted, the kind of bone-deep fatigue that comes from fighting unwinnable battles. They're blaming you for everything, she said after we sat down. The vendor issues, the production delays, the lost contracts. Victoria's built this narrative that you sabotage the company on your way out. I stir my coffee. That would require planning. I didn't have time for giving the 10-minute notice of my termination. I know, but here's what you don't know. Eleanor lowered her voice. Victoria was brought in specifically to cut costs and prep the company for a quick flip. The investors want to sell within 18 months, and they need to show consistent 20% margins. Iron Veil was already profitable, I noted. Not profitable enough for them. Eleanor said, your vendor contracts were too fair. They protected both sides. She pulled out her tablet and opened a spreadsheet. Look at these targets, she said. They need to squeeze an additional 12% out of the supply chain. I studied the numbers. Impossible, I said. Not without gutting quality or shifting to overseas suppliers, which would create months of production gaps and destroy the company's reputation for reliability. There's more, Eleanor continued. Victoria didn't fire you because of your leadership style. She fired you because you were the only one who would have challenged these targets. The rest of us were kept in the dark until after you were gone. That's why it was so public. A warning to everyone else. Eleanor nodded. Exactly. And it worked. Nobody is pushing back. So why tell me this? I asked. She closed her tablet. Because I handed in my resignation yesterday. She explained, I'm not participating in what comes next. And she hesitated. There's a board meeting next week. They're going to discuss emergency measures, including potentially closing the ST Hall facility and moving production to Mexico. 200 jobs gone. Harold won't let that happen. I said Harold's being pressured to sell his remaining shares. They're making it very difficult for him to say no, Eleanor said. I walked Eleanor to her car, thanked her for the information, and drove straight to Harold's house. I found him in his garage, tinkering with an old motorcycle. They're going to gut the company, I told him, relaying what Eleanor had shared. Harold put down his wrench and wiped his hands on a rag. I've been feeling the squeeze, he said. Bastards want my shares at 10% below what they're worth. Don't sell, I said. Easy for you to say, Harold replied. You're not getting calls from their lawyers every day. I leaned against his workbench. What if there was another option? What if Weisson acquired Iron Veil instead? I asked. Harold stared at me. You're serious? Julia is looking to expand. She needs manufacturing capacity. Iron Veil needs leadership that values what it's built. It makes sense, I said. Victoria's investors wouldn't sell to you. Too much ego involved now, Harold said. But they would if Iron Veil was on the verge of collapse, if their only hope of recovering their investment was a fire sale. I replied. I met his eyes. How long until the cash flow problems become critical? Harold thought for a moment. At the current burn rate, 6 weeks, maybe 8. And if key suppliers continue to have capacity issues, I pressed, if more customers follow Braxton out the door. A slow smile spread across Harold's face. Colin Drake, you calculating son of a gun. I'm not suggesting anything unethical, I clarified. I'm merely speculating on market conditions. Harold nodded. Of course, purely hypothetical. That night, I drafted an email to Julia outlining an acquisition opportunity that would solve our manufacturing constraints and give us access to complementary product lines and customer relationships. I wasn't orchestrating Iron Veil's downfall. Victoria and her investors were doing that all by themselves. I was simply positioning WIS to pick up the pieces and save those 200 jobs in the process. For the next month, I focused entirely on strengthening WIS's operations. We implemented new inventory controls, streamlined production flows, and established clear quality standards. More importantly, I rebuilt their supplier relationships using the same approach that had worked at Iron Veil: personal connections, mutual benefit, and long-term thinking. Meanwhile, Iron Veil's situation deteriorated exactly as I predicted, not because I interfered, but because Victoria's aggressive cost-cutting and impersonal vendor management created natural consequences. 3 more clients suspended orders this week. Brian texted me. Production's running at 40% capacity. They've started layoffs. I forwarded the update to Julia, adding it to the acquisition case I was building. She'd been initially skeptical, but was coming around as the financial advantages became clearer. If we move, it needs to be soon, she responded, before they lose too much value. The following Friday, I received an unexpected visitor at Weiss Son. Thomas Franklin, my contact from Flynn Security, showed up unannounced. "Got time for lunch?" he asked. Over sandwiches at a nearby deli, he explained his presence. "We're pulling all our business from Iron Vale. Can't rely on them anymore." "Sorry to hear that," I said, meaning it despite everything. I took no pleasure in seeing good people hurt by bad leadership. "We need a new supplier," Thomas continued. "Someone who can deliver the components we need without drama. Someone like Weiss." I sat down my sandwich. "We don't currently manufacture the same components as Iron Vale, but you could." Thomas smiled. "With the right equipment and expertise." "Hypothetically, yes. What if I told you Flynn is prepared to sign a 3-year contract with significant volume guarantees, enough to justify setting up a new production line?" This wasn't just an opportunity for Weiss. It was leverage for the acquisition. A guaranteed customer base would make Iron Vale's assets and workforce even more valuable to us. "I'd need to discuss it with Julia," I said, "but it's certainly interesting." When I brought the proposal to Julia that afternoon, along with updated information on Iron Vale's declining situation, she made her decision. "Make them an offer," she said, "but do it through Harold first. Test the waters before we show our full hand." I called Harold that evening and outlined the plan. He would approach Victoria's investment group, presenting himself as a concerned former owner with a potential lifeline, an interested buyer willing to acquire Iron Vale at a reduced but fair price. "Won't mention Weiss or you initially," Harold confirmed. "Just gauge their desperation." Perfect. 3 days later, Harold called back. They bit harder than I expected, barely negotiated. They won out before next quarter's financials hit. Did they ask who the buyer is? Of course. I told them a private investment group. They didn't push. They're too eager to stop the bleeding. We moved quickly after that. Julia assembled the acquisition team with me providing detailed information on Iron Vale's assets, capabilities, and remaining strengths. We structured the deal to retain as many employees as possible. People I knew personally whose skills and dedication deserved better than what Victoria had given them. 2 weeks later, with a preliminary agreement in place, it was time to reveal Weiss as the buyer and me as the architect of the acquisition. The meeting was set for Monday morning at Iron Vale's headquarters, exactly 3 months after my very public dismissal. I selected my suit carefully that morning, not to impress Victoria, but out of respect for the moment. This wasn't about revenge. It was about restoration. I walked into Iron Vale's conference room at precisely 9 a.m., followed by Julia and our legal team. Victoria's face when she saw me was worth every sleepless night of the past 3 months. "What is this?" she demanded, looking for me to herald to her investors. "Mr. Drake is here representing the acquiring company." Harold explained calmly. "This is a joke." Victoria stood up. "We're not selling to him." The lead investor, a thin man named Jeffrey Pearson, cleared his throat. "The preliminary agreement has been signed. Victoria Borks is acquiring Iron Vale's assets, and Mr. Drake will be overseeing the integration." "You can't do this," she insisted. "He's the reason we're in this situation. He sabotaged our vendor relationships." I remained standing, hands clasped behind my back. I haven't contacted a single Iron Vale vendor since my departure. I'd be happy to provide phone records, emails, and sworn statements confirming that fact. "Then how do you explain what you're experiencing?" I interrupted calmly. "Is it not the natural consequence of treating business relationships as transactions rather than partnerships? Those vendors didn't even tell them how little you valued them." Julia stepped forward, taking control of the meeting. "We're here to finalize the acquisition terms. Weiss will retain majority ownership with Harold maintaining his current stake. We'll keep the Iron Vale brand and as many employees as operations can support." Victoria looked at Jeffrey and the other investors for support, but found none. They were cutting their losses, and she was just another liability to shed. "What about me?" she finally asked. Julia glanced at me, then back to Victoria. "Your services won't be needed during the transition or beyond." Victoria gathered her papers with shaking hands. "You planned this from the beginning," she accused me. "You set me up to fail." I shook my head. "No, Victoria. You did that all by yourself when you decided that relationships didn't matter, when you dismissed 7 years of work without taking the time to understand it." She left without another word. The investors stayed, eager to complete the deal that would salvage at least part of their investment. I felt no triumph, only a quiet certainty that justice had been served. 6 months later, I stood on the manufacturing floor of the newly integrated Weiss Iron Veil operation. We kept 185 of the original 200 jobs, consolidated administrative functions, and expanded production capabilities. Most importantly, we'd rebuilt the vendor relationships that had made Iron Veil successful in the first place. It took time, trust, and transparency, explaining our vision, honoring past commitments, and creating new partnerships built on mutual respect. The combined company was on track to hit $20 million in annual revenue, nearly double what Iron Veil had achieved at its peak. Julia had made good on her equity promise, making me a minority owner with real skin in the game. As I completed my daily walkthrough, Bryant, now our production manager, approached with a tablet. "Midwest Precision just confirmed the new delivery schedule," he reported, "and Valori Components agreed to the quality improvement program," he added. "They appreciate the return to the old way of doing business." "Good. Let's visit them both next month. See the improvements firsthand," I said. Bryant nodded. "By the way, heard anything about Victoria consulting for a private equity firm in Chicago last I heard? Think she learned anything from all this?" I considered the question as we walked past workers assembling laboratory equipment alongside robotics components, the integrated product lines that gave us our competitive edge. "Probably not the right lesson," I finally answered. "People rarely do." That evening, I stayed late reviewing plans for our next expansion. Harold stopped by on his way out. "A fishing trip planned for weekend," he said. "You prove your point," he added, leaning against my office doorway. "Built it back better than before." "It wasn't about proving a point," I replied. Harold smiled. "Sure, Colin. Whatever helps you sleep at night." I returned to my paperwork after he left, but my mind drifted to that day by the Mississippi when I sat watching barges bite the current. Sometimes go with the flow isn't the answer. Sometimes you have to push back, not with anger or vengeance, but with quiet determination. I hadn't set out to destroy Victoria or to take over Iron Veil. I'd simply refused to let good work be undone by someone who couldn't see its value. That was revenge enough. We apologize for the delivery delay. As anticipated, we are ending the contract. John sent a single heartless email apologizing, so I gave a forceful response. Then, unexpectedly, Emma called me. She immediately stated, "We'll look elsewhere," and hung up. She most likely assumed I would plead for a contract renewal. I would never do it, though. I was going to break things off permanently. "Do you believe you've won today? Or are you simply playing a bluff?" I whispered to myself, feeling a tiny glimmer of resolve. In any case, you're a total idiot. While idly reading the news the following day, I came across this intriguing headline. A well-known beauty portal site declares a Q1 2024 loss of $50 million. The first drop in sales since the company's establishment. This was just what I expected. Michael is my name. I'm 40 years old. I work for a new cosmetic company called Infinite Beauty Company. A couple of us from a large pharmaceutical business started the Infinite Beauty business. As the marketing director and senior executive officer, my picture is shamefully displayed on our website. I'm meeting with a big advertising firm today. Well, how about you unleash your boundless beauty? Yes, that is where our company name, Infinite Beauty Company, came from. John arched a questioning eyebrow as he took my business card. The president of Mile Incorporated, a business that operates a comprehensive beauty portal website, is his son. So what was this product you recently developed once more? John pointed to the tiny sample vial I had sent in and inquired. I leaned forward just enough to give a thorough explanation of the product we had laboriously created. It's our company's well-known men's skincare line, Men's Infinite Radiance. Oh, I see. Could you perhaps provide our quality department a big batch of these samples? Is that all right, Emma? John politely inquired of the young lady seated beside him. Emma is her name. Recently, she joined Mile Inc. Her unusually pale skin, thick eye makeup, and colored contacts give her a dazzling appearance. According to rumors, she is John's favorite, and he becomes unduly affectionate while speaking with her in professional settings. Yes, we need to verify the quality ourselves before we can feature them. Emma, you're such a career woman now. I'm impressed. John didn't hesitate to place his rough right hand on her delicate right hand, but Emma didn't seem to mind and instead smiled warmly at him. John's nose stretched in delight at her smile. After the meeting, I sent the Men's Infinite Radiance samples to Mile Incorporated as instructed. But after a week, then two, there was no response from them. I even sent a follow-up email, but still. I began to worry that I might have sent the samples to the wrong address. As a professional, they should at least acknowledge receipt. So I decided to call them. The other day, we sent samples of our skincare products to your quality department. Is Emma available? Oh, this is Emma. What do you need? I felt a sense of relief as I unexpectedly got through to her directly. However, Emma's tone was clearly annoyed. We hadn't heard back from you, so I was wondering how you found our products. God, you pester us with phone calls these days, Emma snapped at me with a sharp curt. Come to think of it, I remember hearing at a management seminar that young people these days dislike phone calls. Feeling the generational gap keenly, I responded humbly. I'm sorry. I did send emails, but I didn't get a response. It might have been a sending error on our part. Just in case, could you check your email? I heard the rough clicking of a mouse on the other end of the line. Oh, Infinite Beauty. Infinite Beauty count. Oh, there it is. In the spam folder, Emma stated nonchalantly. For a moment, it felt like she was saying I was a nuisance myself. During our meeting, she seemed more cheerful and approachable, but over the phone, she came off as quite indifferent. So how did you find our products? I tried to steer the conversation back. Emma replied with an uninterested tone. They weren't bad. I see. It seemed this conversation wasn't going anywhere. I decided to change the angle a bit. During our meeting with John, he mentioned creating a dedicated page for Men's Infinite Radiance on your portal site. Did he now? Yes, he did. I wondered what that meeting was all about. Emma hadn't even reviewed the minutes. Could I speak with John, please? It would be very helpful if you could connect me to him. I'll take the message. What do you need? It's about the dedicated page. I wanted to end this fruitless exchange quickly. Finally, some help came. Oh, John! Emma's tone suddenly shifted to a much higher pitch. It seemed John was nearby. The guy from the other day is pestering us. Please help, John. Oh. Even though I couldn't see them, their flirting made me feel slightly uncomfortable. Hey, John, that skincare product had a nice texture. I want more samples. They're expensive to buy. I'll buy them for you, but it's handy to have travel sizes for overnight stays. Overnight stays? Yes, that's true. What was I listening to? I wanted to quietly put the receiver down. I sent those samples because John suggested that if our products were well received internally, they might create a dedicated page for Men's Infinite Radiance on their portal site. If they were only for personal use, I would be quite upset. But Emma, those are men's products, right? Do you want them that much? They seem to suit my skin well. Look, it's so smooth. Oh, it really is. I didn't even want to imagine what those two were doing on the other end of the line. I just wish they would press the hold button. Emma, I'll take the call. Please do. Finally, John took the receiver. I let out a short sigh and straightened my posture. Michael, Men's Infinite Radiance has gotten rave reviews internally, but we need to evaluate it a bit more, so please send more samples. More samples? As we talked, I realized something. Right now, he's more focused on Emma than on work. The internal reviews he's talking about are likely just Emma's opinion. While I was glad she liked our product, we weren't sending samples as a favor. I quickly came up with an excuse. I'm sorry. We're currently out of stock. We're honored that you like our product. How about the dedicated page on your portal site then? Emma muttered sulkily on the other end. Men's Infinite Radiance are rare because they're only sold in physical stores in New York. I wanted to share them with my friends and show off. Well, if they're out of stock, there's nothing we can do. John, trying to console Emma, didn't seem troubled at all. Rather, he seemed genuinely pleased to be needed by her. John thought for a moment and then made a decision. Our quality department has given the green light, so yes, let's create the dedicated page. Really? Thank you so much. To be honest, I had a bad feeling that this deal might fall through. If our products were featured on such a well-known beauty portal site, our sales could double or triple, and having the dedicated page would mean we might need to expand our production line. I gripped the receiver, a bit excited. Then could we discuss the design and direction of the page? Please let me know what documents are needed. Sure. We'll talk later. John quickly ended the call. I made a small fist pump, unexpectedly securing a big deal. The awkward atmosphere between those two and Emma's casual attitude was somewhat concerning, but the results were worth it. However, I would later realize how naive and reckless this thought was. I was shocked when I saw the schedule Emma sent for the page's launch. It was so unreasonable that I called again to protest. Is this Emma? Yes, it is. As I said before, please stop calling out of the blue. Emma's voice was openly annoyed. Emma, I hate to bring this up. The scheduled launch is a year from now. Didn't we agree on 3 months? When I pressed her, she responded irritably. We're doing you a favor by featuring it, so it's fine if it takes a bit longer. We're not in a hurry. But we have been preparing extensively for this launch. It was our first time selling online. We've been coordinating staffing and reorganizing our inventory management system. There's not much difference between a year and 3 months. This woman didn't seem to grasp the seriousness of the situation at all. Realizing this wasn't going anywhere, I decided to be clear. I will visit your office tomorrow. Let's discuss this in person. Tomorrow? Out of the blue? That's highly unreasonable, don't you think? I barely held back from telling her who was being unreasonable. After some persuasion, Emma reluctantly agreed to meet with me tomorrow. It would be helpful if John could join us as well. I emphasized to her that having just Emma present wouldn't mean much even if I went all the way there. Yeah, I'll mention it. Anyway, he comes running when I call. I gave a wry smile. Her final casual remark gave me a glimpse into their relationship. The next day, I headed to Mile Incorporated with determination. In the conference room, John and Emma were leisurely chatting over coffee. Emma, let's have dinner together tonight. Of course. I want steak, lots of prime steak. All right. I'll make a reservation at my favorite place. At the entrance of the conference room, I hesitated to step in. Their conversation was like that of a hostess and a regular customer at a nightclub.
I cautiously stepped between them. Sorry to impose today. I didn't really need to apologize, but I made sure to be polite.
Really? We're busy too, you know. He insisted on meeting, so we cleared our schedules and booked a conference room, Emma said condescendingly.
I was determined not to be defeated by this atmosphere.
As I mentioned on the phone yesterday, the schedule you gave us for the dedicated page launch is a year away. Our agreement was for 3 months. I placed the printed schedule in front of them. Seeing it, John crossed his arms and spoke hesitantly.
Oh, right. Is that you're not okay? You seem to be rushing us a lot. They looked at each other and agreed in unison. Right. I didn't back down and leaned in.
We agreed on 3 months. We even signed a contract. A portion of the sales from the dedicated page goes to your company, and we're preparing accordingly. If the launch was delayed, it would undoubtedly cause confusion within our company. We're still a startup. I wanted to avoid anything that would lower employee morale.
When I pleaded, John spoke indifferently.
Fine. 3 months it is. But we get 5 days to review each task, and your company has to respond the same day. Is that okay? I was furious. Reviewing all tasks within the same day was unheard of. Oh, what's this, Michael? You seem angry. If you don't like it, we can cancel the dedicated page, John threatened me lightly.
But I couldn't back down for the sake of the company. All right, that's fine. Though unsatisfied, I accepted their unreasonable conditions.
As expected, the dedicated page didn't progress according to schedule. John finally delivered the test page 4 months later. Sorry for the delay in delivery. We're terminating the contract. As expected, John apologized with a single email without any remorse. So I responded firmly. Then, surprisingly, I got a call from Emma. We'll look elsewhere. There are plenty of good products besides Men's Infinite Radiance. She said that abruptly and hung up. She probably thought I would come begging to renew the contract, but I would never do that.
I intended to cut ties with them for good.
Do they think they've won? Or are they just bluffing? Either way, they're complete fools, I muttered to myself, feeling a small spark of determination. The next day, while casually browsing the news, I saw an interesting headline. Popular beauty portal site reports $50 million loss for Q1 2024, first revenue decline since founding.
This was undoubtedly about Melling. Oh well, just as I thought. This situation was exactly as I had predicted.
I had been furious with the way those two handled their work. One day at our monthly drinking party, I told my 2 college buddies about this, and they were deeply sympathetic. Yeah, a lot of the staff there are like Emma. I bet John picks them based on looks. Robert, who works for a major pharmaceutical company, joked about it. He belongs to the development department for quasi-drugs and medicinal cosmetics and has a close relationship with M-Style. Last year, over 60% of their online advertising budget was spent with misstyling. Rumor has it they manipulate the ratings in the review section. They deliberately lower the rankings of manufacturers that can't pay for ads, Robert said dismissively. It's terrible. Manufacturers put their heart into making high-quality products to solve someone's problems. James, who was reaching for some chips next to Robert, chimed in. I had a similar experience recently. There aren't many competitors in the beauty portal site industry, so they become arrogant. James, who runs multiple medical beauty clinics and spas in New York, continued his complaints. Like me, he offered expensive free spa treatments to Emma and other female employees in exchange for a dedicated page for his spa. And this is the result. Isn't it awful? James took out his phone and showed us a screen. There was an unrefined spa introduction article that looked like it was made by an AI. There's no design sense, and the writer's quality is terrible. I decided not to renew the contract and thought I'd be better off making it myself. Our spa was the only one that suffered. James recalled and sighed. Since there are many competitors around, I've been warning them to be careful with those guys. As the drinks flowed, our complaints about Micey Incorporated's methods didn't stop. Eventually, we all reached the same conclusion. Let's cut ties with Midel Incorporated. Our usual drinking party turned into a rally with a different purpose. In the midst of this, James mentioned something that piqued my interest. Recently, we've had a customer at our spa who's been very generous with his money. Listening to James, a hypothesis formed in my mind. A week had passed since the shocking news of the $50 million loss had spread. As expected, John contacted me. "Hello, what can I do for you?" John spoke in a relaxed tone. "Michael, why don't we work together again? This time we'll create a dedicated page as soon as possible." What was he saying now? I firmly refused. I have no intention of doing business with your company again. I stated that flatly and was about to hang up. Then I heard a woman yelling hysterically on the other end. "John, you're the CEO's son. You need to be more assertive." "I'm trying, aren't I, Emma? Don't be so angry, okay? I just got told from above. If we don't renew the contract with Men's Infinite Radiance, our bonuses will be cut." They really needed to learn to use the whole button. I didn't have the time to listen to such petty conversations. "Are we done here?" "Sorry, but we're extremely busy." And that wasn't a lie. After ending the contract with Midel Incorporated, we succeeded in increasing our sales through other means. We quickly launched the official Men's Infinite Radiance video channel, where our president himself became the face of the product and spread reviews, a very straightforward approach. Our president has always been a good speaker and has remarkably youthful skin despite being 45 years old. He is dedicated to his fitness routine at the gym and pays a lot of attention to his diet. Making his good looks the result of his hard work. Many viewers found his words convincing and ended up buying products. We realized from the start that we had the wrong promotional strategy. We've decided to do our PR steadily through our own media without relying on your company. That's a problem for us, John said. In the past few months, many companies like yours have been terminating their contracts. It's a result of reviewing our advertising expenses. This situation was undoubtedly evidence that Robert and James, like me, had started to impose sanctions on Midel Incorporated due to reduction in advertising expenses. Our planned overseas expansion for next year might be canceled too. John was beginning to sound tearful as he pleaded. But that was none of my concern. People who readily disclose internal affairs to outsiders aren't trustworthy. Sooner or later, we were bound to cut ties with them. "That's a tough situation," I said in a flat, emotionless tone. "Right. Oh, I just thought of a good idea. I'll head over there right now." Right now? I was utterly exasperated by his self-centered disregard for our schedule. However, I decided to give him one last chance and reluctantly agreed to the meeting. An hour later, John and Emma showed up happily without any gifts. I led them to the hastily prepared guest meeting room. "I have another meeting soon, so please keep this brief." Naturally, I didn't offer them any coffee, but John, acting arrogantly, plopped down on a chair. "Come here, Emma." "Sure." I couldn't help but frown at their behavior. I also noticed that Emma had started speaking informally to John. "So, Michael, let's cut to the chase. How about we do exclusive sales for you? Managing your own media is too much trouble to sustain." John's eyes sparkled as he said that. I was honestly speechless. Exclusive sales? How could he make such a self-serving proposal in this situation? Exclusivity would increase rarity, and in the long run, it would contribute to sales. "Emma, show him what you made." "Sure." Emma, prompted by John, showed me an illustration. She must have made it in a hurry, as she proudly placed a hand-drawn piece of paper in front of me. "Emma, what is this?" I had never seen such an amateurish proposal before. Emma confidently explained, "As you can see, it's a proposal. We'll handle promotions, sales, inventory management, and shipping." Wow, you're quite the capable woman. I tried to stay calm, though it was a struggle. "Isn't that beyond the scope of your company's operations? Do you have the expertise for this?" "If you send us all the Men's Infinite Radiance products you have, we'll ship them out in order." I often use flea market sites personally. Flea market sites? What did these people think of our products, which we had painstakingly developed? Their disrespectful attitude toward the creators finally made me snap. Don't be ridiculous. There's no way I would entrust our valuable products to you. Emma, you're just planning to sell them at a high price behind our backs, aren't you? Taken aback by my sudden change in tone, they both stare at me with their mouths open. Emma, it seems you've fallen for the #1 host in Las Vegas. Should I mention his stage name right here? Emma's eyes widened in shock at the unexpected revelation. How do you know Austin? Oh, I smirked. Emma had dug her own grave. I remembered what James had said at that drinking party. There was a wealthy male customer who turned out to be Emma's main man. Emma, having fallen for the #1 host in Las Vegas, had been siphoning off the large batch of men's infinite radiance samples I sent to him. Of course, that wasn't all. John, haven't you been showering this woman with gifts? Not just prime steak, but also clothes and bags. How do you know that? Isn't this something you gave her? I showed John a certain account page on a flea market site. It displayed a lineup of branded bags, wallets, jewelry, and dresses used by international celebrities, most marked as sold. However, there were some items that hadn't sold despite being listed for a while. It's the wallet I gave Emma the other day. See? I even paid extra to have her initials embroidered. John pointed with a trembling finger at an image of a monogram wallet with the initials stitched on it. Emma's face turned pale as John pointed this out. This is in my account. I'm not doing this. Oh, but you just mentioned earlier that you use flea market sites frequently. The money you made from selling these items, I wonder where it went. As I said this, John turned on Emma. You're giving all this money to that host Austin, aren't you? Emma pressed her lips together and frowned, remaining silent. John, holding his mouth in shock, shouted angrily on the spot. You never wore any of the things I bought you, did you? I thought they weren't to your taste, so I kept buying things you might like a fool. But as John raged, Emma's expression suddenly turned cold. She raised one corner of her mouth and let out a creepy laugh. What's so funny? There's no way I could ever genuinely like someone like you. And don't put initials on things. That wallet has been unsold because of it, and its value has dropped. What? Emma, now unapologetic, finally spoke her mind. I only got close to you because you're the CEO's son. You were happy to be with a young, beautiful girl like me, weren't you? You should be grateful. John, shaking with anger, was now being mocked by Emma. I stepped in between them. Let's get back on topic. I had no intention of listening to this petty squabble any longer. Turning to face them, I slowly tore up Emma's ridiculous proposal. What are you doing? Emma stood up quickly and glared at me. You can continue your argument as much as you like. As I mentioned earlier, I'm very busy, so I'll be taking my leave. Wait. Please wait. John hurriedly stood up, trying to grab my arm. I coldly pushed him away. I have nothing more to say. Please, the company is really in danger. John kept pleading, but I looked at him with contempt. The company's in danger? You brought this upon yourselves. You looked down on your clients, pursued only your own profits, and did whatever you pleased. Don't say it like that. John shrank visibly, and Emma looked at him with pity. I turned to Emma and coldly said, Don't think you're off the hook either. You're on the same level as him. Your cycle of giving and receiving is laughable from an outsider's perspective. Emma, feeling cornered, raised her voice in a shrill scream. What the hell? Acting all high and mighty, old man. Youth is not eternal. If you don't know how to age well, you'll regret it. Imagine the fate of someone who can't even follow basic manners and has only shallow knowledge at that. Emma, like John, had nothing to say in response. Just then, there was a knock on the door, and the door to the conference room opened slightly and hesitantly. The receptionist peeked into the conference room. Michael, your next appointment is here. Thank you. I'll be right there. I left the two of them looking miserable and turned off the lights in the conference room. In the dark, John looked vacant and Emma was stunned. Without looking back at them, I left the room. As reported in the online news, M Style Incorporated had accumulated a $50 million loss. The reasons included multiple companies pulling their ads after reviewing their advertising expenses, the exposure of manipulated reviews, and the entry of a major Chinese e-commerce competitor into the U.S. market. However, I believe these were not the direct causes. Ultimately, the root causes were the management style of John and his team, and the presence of employees like Emma, who had no sense of responsibility towards their work. In response to this issue, M Style Incorporated decided to completely overhaul their management team. John, who had been a senior executive solely because he was the CEO's son, was fired. Emma, angry at losing John, who had been her biggest benefactor, and at having her bonus cut as a penalty for the terminated contract, impulsively resigned. However, no company was willing to hire someone with Emma's lack of experience and lazy attitude toward work. Still determined to meet her beloved man, Emma sold her belongings, turned to working in the nightlife industry, and spent all her earnings on Austin in Las Vegas. Despite knowing how all the money he spent on her was used, John couldn't forget Emma. He was occasionally seen wandering the corners of Las Vegas, pathetically chasing after her, rejected each time for having no money left. John aged rapidly and now roams the streets, looking almost like a homeless person. As for me, I'm now focusing on marketing a new skincare series, following the success of Men's Infinite Radiance. The daily grind is intense, but my satisfaction is high. Today is the monthly drinking party with Robert and James. With the post-work beer as my goal, I fired up my computer with renewed determination.